Welcome to another episode of the Talking NorCal podcast, Active NorCal's official podcast. I am your host, Zach O'Brien. With me here, as always, is Bob, and you're wearing a hat, but your hair's looking fresh today.
Thank you, sir. I got a haircut finally after 4 months. It feels great.
We both did, and my head feels 10 pounds lighter. I had a huge afro. It feels pretty good. But we have an awesome episode of the Talking NorCal podcast today. We have a great interview with Matt Heron. He is a fishing guide and teaches a fishing school in Truckee, California. So I sat down with him to talk all things fishing. I actually came across him in a viral video that he posted where he dives into the Truckee River and catches the biggest brown trout I've ever seen in my life.
Legit video.
It's such a good video. So we talked about that, why he dove into the water after this huge fish, and everything fishing you can think of, both in NorCal and around the world. He's an awesome guy. So that's coming up here in a second. But first, I want to hear from our listeners. So I'm beginning the Active NorCal Letter to the Editor program. Do you have any questions for us? Do you have an opinion on things that we talk about? Are there some stuff you want to talk more about on this podcast or less? Let us know. Send me anything you want to talk about, and we're going to either read those or discuss them on the podcast. We're going to publish them on our website, and we want to do some live video segments where we go over the letters to the editor. So send me an email. My email is Zach, Z-A-C-H, Zach at activenorcal.com. Send me your letter to the editor. We really just want to create a dialogue with our audience, with our network. So anything you want to talk about, send it over to me and we can start talking one-on-one with the people of NorCal. This is going to be a lot of fun. Also, please take a second real quick and subscribe to the Talking NorCal podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We're everywhere. Go subscribe and don't miss a single episode. Okay, let's jump into this episode with the Tahoe's Hella NorCal.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and there are no salad dudes who kick it down in Santa Cruz. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal.
So I want to begin the podcast today on a little bit different note, stepping out of our comfort zone a little bit and talking about what's going on not only around the world, but in NorCal and the protests over the killing of George Floyd. It's something, we're doing this on Monday afternoon. It happened all weekend. And we saw it all around Northern California in different cities, people joining together to protest. And some of them were a little bit different than others. This isn't necessarily a NorCal issue, and this is not something that we'll talk about a lot on our networks, but it is a local issue to me. We saw the protests start, late last week, and they sort of grew and grew, and the peaceful protests started to get more violent, and they started to turn into riots and looting. And I saw all the video, and I talked to some people who were at the looting and the riots in Sacramento, in downtown Sacramento. And just crazy. People were busting open windows to local businesses owned by local people and just stealing everything and just destroying entire stores. I spoke with our good friend Backcountry Craig. He's in downtown San Francisco, and he says it's just like a war zone there. It's definitely turned violent. It's definitely, everyone's breaking different stores, and that's where it becomes a NorCal issue for me. Is we're all about supporting local, and the fact that this issue is causing people to destroy local businesses is disconcerting.
Well, not only that, on Friday, a federal officer was killed in the riot. He was shot. 53-year-old Patrick Underwood of Pinole, P-I-N-O,
Yeah.
Pinole. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's terrible, terrible news, and it's a local issue pretty much across the country. My My best friend lives in Santa Monica. Yesterday, they were just absolutely going insane there. He was very worried. He has a newborn. I used to live in San Diego. There was an arrest on Friday in La Mesa, which is kind of East San Diego, that kind of went viral. It wasn't as violent, but there was definitely some violence in the video, and the kid should not have been arrested for sure. So there was huge looting in La Mesa, and a friend of mine actually went live there. He lives about 2 blocks from where all the mayhem was, and 3 buildings were set on fire within just from his front yard. You could see, and so he was live all night. I couldn't stop watching it. It was unfortunate. Yeah, it's just a terrible story across the globe.
Well, and to be clear, there were actually some great peaceful protests that I saw. I saw a really good one over in Eureka, up in Humboldt, where police officers were kneeling with the protesters. They were marching with the protesters, saying this is wrong. I saw, some peaceful protests in Reading. I saw a great protest in Oroville where, they're passionate and they're loud, but they are peaceful. So this is where I really want to go with this conversation. There are 2 different types of people in these situations. There's peaceful protesters and people that believe so much in this issue, and rightfully so. I think everyone sort of agrees that this was a really bad situation that should not have happened, and something that we need to fix as a society. And sometimes the way to do that is through peaceful protests. And then there are looters, and they're opportunists, right? These people would steal from local businesses any day of the week. They happen to see an opportunity to do this, and they just go into this zone and they start messing businesses up. These are the people that I have an issue with.
So Trevor Noah had a different take on the looters, if you will. His take was that as a society, we have agreed that there are certain standards that we all should abide by. One of them being don't steal, don't loot. That's just a thing that in our culture has been, we all know as not right. He posted a video on Facebook that I watched this morning. Actually, it's like 18 minutes long, but it's really insightful. And it talks about how it's hard for him. It's hard to get upset with those looters because as a society, yes, we have agreed that there are rules that we all should abide by. One of those rules is that all men are created equal, and that all police officers and all law enforcement should treat every person equal, no matter race, gender, sexual orientation, etc. His perspective is that these guys aren't gonna hold up all of the other, cultural laws that we all abide by if the laws that affect them personally are being victimized and they're being exploited. And so it was a different take that I've heard. He talks about domino effects, and it's an 18-minute video. It's very insightful. I'm probably butchering it, but also today or yesterday, Barack Obama posted an article to Medium laying out the next steps he thinks protesters should take. He does outline in there that while there are some violent protesters, the vast majority
99%
majority of them are peaceful. And so this is an ongoing issue. It's been an issue for several years. It's going to continue to be an issue for several years to come until things are changed. I don't know how to do that. I am not the expert at it, but I have a feeling Obama probably laid out. I didn't read the article, but he probably laid out some pretty good ideas of the next steps.
Well, and I followed the Sacramento protests and subsequent riot pretty closely from journalists in the area, and they're talking about how people are just running up and stealing their cameras. They're stealing their phones from out of their hands because these people, the cops aren't there because they can't, right? So they're being selfish and they're stealing everything. And, they broke into the Bevmo and there's guys with full handfuls of liquor. It's like really, and I think the biggest problem is these looters and these violent protesters are ruining the message that's being construed from the peaceful protesters and the people that want change. And they are literally burning their own neighborhood to the ground. For what? Like, that doesn't do anything. And And it's sad because I think this was an opportunity for everyone to come together. I think everyone sort of has the same view that this type of stuff shouldn't happen. And, I have law enforcement friends that have said from day one, there's some bad law enforcement officers out there. And the best way for us to stay safe is to get them off, because the people, if you match a bad police officer with a good one, then that puts the good police officer in danger because people distrust them and they want to resist. So, but the looters, they messed everything up, and this is where it becomes personal to us, where you're damaging local business. We're all about local business here. We're all about Northern California, and that was really hard for me to see. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I know everyone's talking about it, and this is Monday, so this will probably come out on Tuesday. I don't know everything that's going to happen between now and then. I mean, we have curfews up. We have a curfew in Sacramento now. There's a curfew in San Francisco.
We can't not talk about it. It's what's going on.
Right. And I do think, although this is a national issue, an international issue for that matter, it really hits home because people are messing with local businesses. And that's where I get pissed off. Literally, we have to go up and clean, our own streets because some jackasses feel that, they can steal and they can do whatever they want. And these are the type of bad people that would do it anytime they could. They just have this opportunity. So we hate to talk about this stuff, but it really hit home for us today. So I just wanted to mention it briefly. So, I hope we can use this opportunity to come together, not only as a country, but a local community, and make it the best it can be. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our regularly scheduled topics. Let's talk about the news of the week.
All right. First, NorCal news of the week. Fisherman nearly breaks California record with 25-pound rainbow trout on the Feather River. This thing was a lunker.
Joshua Giordano landed a 25.5-pound rainbow trout on the Feather River. It was just below Orville Dam in the Thermalito diversion pool. And there are some big fish that hang out in that pool, and he usually he's catch and release. Although he's a bait fisherman, he's catch and release. But he got this guy and he said, this might be a record. So he actually kept it. He brought it up to the hatchery and had it weighed, and it came just 1.5 pounds short of the record for inland rainbow trout. So there's 3 records. Anybody that doesn't know this, and I'm sort of just learning all this, by the way.
It's very well outlined in the article on ActiveNorCal.com.
Yeah, well, the record. So there's a record for inland rainbow trout. There's a record for steelhead, and there's a record for domestic rainbow trout. So the inland rainbow trout record is 27 pounds. The steelhead record is 27 pounds, 4 ounces. And the domestic rainbow record is 28 pounds, 5 ounces. So his was 25.5. It's right up in that category. And I guess this guy catches like a ton of these things. I guess that's like his specialty.
I like that he normally is catch and release, but because he knew it was close to a record, he kept it. And, kudos to him. I would probably do the same thing. If it's potentially a state record, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, I mean, he had, in order to be eligible for the record, he had to take it up to the hatchery. So, a lot of people were in the comments section saying that's bad. And we are catch and release 100%. I don't blame him in this particular situation. And, but this is a big story. I mean, that's, so if you're looking at, it was basically, it's probably the biggest fish caught in NorCal in 15 years.
That's been submitted, at least, yeah.
That's been submitted, correct. And they not all are, because, like we're finding out, you have to weigh it at an official weigh station. But pretty cool. And if you look at the picture, it's an awesome looking fish.
Beautiful fish.
Just huge. And that went pretty viral on our website this week, just short of the California record. So I don't think we're going to see another fish like this for a while. But cool story.
All right, next story. Thunderstorms bring rain, lightning, and quart-size hail to NorCal.
It's weird. I feel like the end of every May we get something like this, like a crazy story on the back of a super hot week. So last week was like 107, and then we get into the weekend and it's this crazy storm. Did you get caught up in the storm at all?
I didn't get caught up in it. I did see lightning from afar, and I saw the article, so I saw those quart-size hails. It just feels like 2020 is trying to tell us something. Like,
No, well, this was reminiscent of last year, May 24th, the crazy tornado-like thunderstorm. It wasn't that bad, but it does seem like every year, like late May, we get a crazy storm. But I was seeing reports of it all week. I was following it all weekend, and then Saturday afternoon, late afternoon, it was about a 20-minute downpour where I was that was insane. It was like, I don't know if you've ever been to Florida, but Florida has these raindrops that are like huge, and that's what it felt like. It felt like a Florida downpour. But yeah, so there's pictures emerging of these massive pieces of hail that are explained as quarter size, but they look a lot bigger than that. They're like
Close-
half dollars.
yeah, close to golf ball size.
Yeah, maybe a little bit
smaller,
smaller than yeah. And then there was a flash flood watch, although I didn't see any flooding that occurred. But now since the fires of 2018, they're so paranoid about these big storms because flooding's much worse in a storm area.
And lightning causes fires.
And lightning, which we're getting into drought status in NorCal, and up in Siskiyou County, there were like 61 strikes in one day of lightning. And I didn't see any lightning where we're at, but I saw the reports, and it was a crazy storm.
Yeah.
So I think this has to become a rite of passage into summer every year in NorCal. A rite of passage. You sort of get those nice spring months, and it's nice, and then you get this crazy storm at the end of May, and then you go into the hotness and the sunshine
hot
of
fire
summer
season. Yeah.
So we'll have to watch. I mean, we won't know until another year from now, but
Basically, you're saying it's par for the course.
it is one hard storm to end spring and bring us into summer. And if you guys are questioning me, look it up. This happens every year because I follow all this stuff pretty closely. But cool storm.
Maybe the last rain we get for a while. Okay, next story. 2 more major outdoor destinations open in NorCal. Lassen Volcanic National Park and Point Reyes National Seashore. Pretty awesome news.
Great news. Lassen was interesting because they announced it probably about a week and a half ago. They announced that they were opening on Friday, the 27th, I believe, 28th maybe. And about 3 days before, they get this spike in coronavirus cases in Lassen County, which Lassen hadn't seen any cases at all. And they started opening business back up, and they had this surge in cases, which I say surge, there were 5 people, but Lassen's a pretty rural county. And so people were saying, are we still going to go to Lassen? So basically what Lassen came out and said is, yes, we're staying open. There's no services. The visitor centers are closed. So bring everything. You can't get gas here. You can't get food. You can't get water. Bring it all. So it was interesting. I think, no one was expecting coronavirus cases to spike as soon as they were ready to open this park, which has been closed for 2 months. But yeah, so it's basically open through the whole highway. The highway's open. Bump as hell is closed. There's too much snow. A couple spots are closed. There's too much snow. But there's camping open. Starting today, actually, June 1st, there's camping open, and wilderness camping is open. The fees are back up, so you have to pay your fee as soon as you get in. But great news.
I'll say it is a sign of things getting back to normal. Another sign is that it was about 20 minutes into the podcast before we mentioned COVID-19 once.
Yeah.
I looked at it's been 20 minutes.
Life
since,
comes at you
I mean,
fast.
we have a lot going on, and we still have the backdrop of coronavirus in the background, but things are getting back to normal because it was 20 minutes into a podcast before we even mentioned it. I can't wait to get back to Lassen, and I can't wait to actually get to Point Reyes. I still have yet to go there, and I can't wait to go to both.
Yeah, speaking of Point Reyes, I remember as soon as the shelter in place took hold, Point Reyes was bombarded with Bay Area folk looking to get out of the house. It was kind of the only thing you could do at that stage in the quarantine. At that stage, you couldn't do anything throughout the quarantine, but back then it was actually open, and they saw this huge surge of people. So they closed the parking lots, they closed the roads. So they actually stayed open. You could go in. It wasn't like Lassen where you just couldn't go in at all. You could go in, but you either had to ride a bike or you had to hike in or run or what have you. So it's been empty, and so it was been technically closed, but they finally opened most of the parking lots. They opened most of the roads, not all, but most, and it's just another place for people to go now, and it's good. Obviously, we can tiptoe back into this reopening of everything, but we do want to see more places open, so those certain places that have opened earlier than others aren't too crowded, right? We got to disperse.
It's great that we're opening back up, but everyone just remember, try to keep your distance. Let's try to keep this going and continue to open things instead of close things because the curve has gone the wrong direction. So just keep that in mind.
Practice social distancing. And by the way, Point Reyes said they want everyone in the park to wear a mask. So take that with you. I don't think that's necessary, but that's what they say. They say wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart from each other. We will see. They just announced this, that it will open. We'll see how crowded it gets, because it is that Bay Area crowd that's been stuck at home and it is a heavily populated area. We'll see. I hope they don't have to shut back down, but wear a mask, practice social distancing. I think that's the only place that's told people to wear masks outside. I'm just being honest. It seems a little ridiculous to me, but I understand it. They're trying to be safe. So,
okay, last NorCal note of the week: more than 4,600 Lahontan cutthroat trout released into Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, we actually talk about this in our interview coming up here shortly with Matt Heron. I interviewed him last week, and the news came out like 2 days later that they did the second release. So here's the story of Lahontan cutthroat trout. They were once known to be native of Lake Tahoe, Truckee River, and Pyramid Lake, which are connected. Pyramid Lake in Nevada is connected to Lake Tahoe via the Truckee River. And the native trout in those areas were Lahontan cutthroats, and they are the largest inland trout in the world. And they're the only native fish to Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. So they're a beautiful fish, and they're huge, and they're awesome for fishing. Now, following decades of poor land management and logging and overfishing in the 1930s, the fish just completely disappeared from the area. They were wiped out. Now, multiple agencies, including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, are trying to bring them back to, make Tahoe a fishing destination again. And so back in October, they released 5,000 into Lake Tahoe. And these are just the little babies, And then again, last week, they released 4,645 into Lake Tahoe, making 10,000 total that they've placed in there over the last 7 months. The fish respond at the Lahontan National Fish Hatchery in Gardnerville, and they're actually protected under the Endangered Species Act, but due to a special rule, you're still allowed to fish for them. So it's going to be interesting. Say in 2-3 years, we might see some massive trout coming out of all three of those fisheries, but most specifically Lake Tahoe.
All I gotta say is 10,000 in the last 7 months. Let's go.
Yeah, many of them will not live.
Sure.
You release these baby fish in these huge populations into a lake, and what do you get? You get the things that want to eat
The
them.
bigger predator fish, which
Right.
then get larger. So then, all the fish in the whole place are getting larger. It's going to becoming a healthier ecosystem.
And this is I'm not exactly sure. I haven't read so much about the release, but a lot of people criticize the releases of these fish because they don't release them necessarily at the right time. And so like the salmon releases into like the Feather River and the Sacramento River, a lot of people are saying, yeah, those giant striped bass are just gobbling all those things up. So we'll see. It's only time will tell how well this is actually working and how well they're going to take to what was once their native lake. But this is such a cool story, and like I said, we're going to go deep into this with Matt here in a second, and he's got some great insight based on him just knowing everything about fishing the Tahoe area. But will Tahoe become a world-renowned fishery in the heart of Northern California once again?
I hope so.
Let's hope so.
Yep.
That'll be fun.
All right, and that's it. That's the last NorCal note of the week.
All right, that does it for the NorCal notes of the week. So we're going to set the line here, and we're going to go to our interview with Tahoe fishing guide and teacher, Matt Heron. Let's go over to Matt. So now we'd like to welcome onto the podcast Matt Heron. He is a fly fishing guide and teacher in the Truckee area, and he's the host of the Truckee Fly Fishing Podcast. Matt, thank you for joining us. How's it going this evening?
Really well. Thank you for asking. Appreciate you and the crew having me on. It's an honor to be, continuing the NorCal podcast, family here, so this is going to be a blast. And, things are going well. I literally just got off the water and inhaled my dinner to make it on time. So appreciate you being a little flexible with my tardiness.
Awesome. Of course. It's great to have you here. So unfortunately, we've started all of our interviews for the past 2 months by asking how you're doing, if you're staying healthy, all that. I know the Truckee area especially has been affected by the shutdown and the quarantine. What's sort of the vibe going on in Truckee right now?
Yeah, I would say maybe the last few days or this holiday weekend, for the first time in months, the vibe is kind of upbeat. It's kind of nice to finally be able to say that. Obviously we are 100%, we fully rely on the tourist community. And obviously that has been null and void, since early March or whatever the date was when everything got crazy. But, it's a lot of mom and pop businesses. Of course, there's the big hotel chains and, ski resorts. But, deep down, like most of the community is mom and pop, similar to us, and everyone's getting through it. We see the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, So I'm sure at some point we'll be talking the fishing side of things. But the general vibe in Truckee is upbeat. It's nice to be driving through town a little bit the last 4 or 5 days and see like people eating outside, at
Right.
tables, at restaurants. So that certainly is a nice little pick me up. But as far as outdoor activities, I mean, I'll tell you what, it has been a freaking zoo here with people doing stuff, fishing, boating, camping. I mean, the campground's open. They're overflowing with people, which is not
Questionable.
ideal, maybe,
Yeah.
depending on who you talk to and how paranoid you are. But man, the vibe is finally picking up, which is great. Everybody needs it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the outdoor recreation. We're out of Sacramento, and we fished Pewter Creek a few times during this quarantine, and it's just been packed every time. You can't find a parking spot. All the spots that we love to go are just full. So, and obviously fishing's a great way to get out. I mean, we don't want to discourage that. It just seems like everyone has the same idea. Have you seen an uptick in the fishing activity during the quarantine?
Remarkably so. with all of my clients for the last couple weeks since we officially opened, through the quarantine, I was probably, even though our entire spring canceled, right? Overnight, we had 2 months of bookings cancel with me and our crew. And I probably ran a trip a week with locals that I knew that were healthy, went through some protocols even before we were required to do so. And every single person I took out, whether when we were sort of closed or since we've opened, the river has been like 4th of July every freaking day. I mean, just like you're mentioning Cuda Creek, it's incredible. Today was the first day where it was normal. We got to spots we wanted to. We weren't racing to get out early in the morning. People, the last 3 weeks have been itching to get out, combine that with the holiday. And then today was like a breath of fresh air. But yeah, it has been busy.
So I do have to tell you how I first learned about you, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this at all. First, you have a fantastic social media presence. So anyone listening, I recommend go follow him on Facebook and Instagram. But it was about 4 years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, that I came across a video on Vimeo of a fly fisherman on the Truckee River basically diving into the water to grab onto a monster brown trout. And we actually, it was about 4 or 5 years ago that we put that on our website, and to this day, it still gets a ton of hits. And I know
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
I know that the video's I saw it's up to like 300,000 views. I want to hear finally, after all these years, your story, your side of the story, why you went jumping into the Truckee River after that fish on that day.
Oh man. So it depends on how much of the story you how far back you want to go. But as far as that actual moment, the whole like falling in like crazy ending was to put it bluntly, that fish swam into like 4 to 6 inches of water, and I totally airballed 2 net jobs in a row trying to scoop that fish up. And at one point, you can sort of see in the video, my rod is to the right of me. I'm blowing the net job, and the fish starts to drift downstream. And you can see like my line and indicator and tippet on one side, my rod's on the other. And I'm like, oh my God, she's going downstream. And I'm like caught in the middle between my leader and my rod. And the rest is history. Just kind of did a face plant, put my hand down on one side, her nose went into it, tried to grab her tail with my right hand, obviously ditched the rod. And just a, completely unusual ending to hooking, one of the biggest fish in my life. Getting it on film was just, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, it was just kind of one of those things where it wasn't planned. It was just like, either, do a face plant in the water and grab this fish, or it's definitely going to break off. There's no doubt about it.
So. I've never seen that before, and I grew up around fly fishing. But you sort of see the look in your face, and because in the video you can't, when you're first watching it, you have no idea what's in the water. You have no idea what you've hooked, and then you see your face as you're looking the fish dead in the eyes, and then you just dove for it. So I always thought of it as, a desperation. I'm not letting this thing get out of my hands for anything.
I'll roll with that definition. It was desperation. There is no way around it.
Well, that was
last case scenario, last resort, whatever you want to call it. It's
an awesome video. It's great. And like I said, I mean, people have been going to our website to watch that video for years. So, I
appreciate it.
I'm always interested in the story of fishing guides. My father was a fishing guide for 25 years. I grew up in the fishing community. And I'm always interested sort of how you started and then how you turned your passion, how you started fishing, and then how you turned that fishing passion into a career. So what's your story? How'd you get into it?
Yeah, great question. This could be the whole podcast in itself, just this one question. So grew up in upstate New York, fishing with my dad is the short answer. We have pictures of me at like 3 years old in the early 80s catching fish. But, like a lot of people early on, especially through the 80s, it was, bait, lures. We had the Mohawk River in my backyard. It was full of smallmouth bass. We were fishing with like live crayfish and just crushing big smallmouth. but we had a fly. Well, it was kind of a tackle and fly shop, a couple miles from my house, if that. And I was a neighborhood kid riding my bike there every other day, just being like, "What's this fly?" and "What's this fly?" to all the old timers, and they were just kind of like, "Ah, get out of here, kid. You're too young to fly fish." And so finally in 1991, I bugged my parents enough to get me my first fly rod. Always had a fascination with it, whether it was the flies, the casting. Back then it was like basically just magazines, the occasional TV show if you got lucky on a Saturday morning, and going to the fly shop and just bugging the old guys. And my dad had a fly rod. He had some flies, but I never really saw him use it. He was not a fly fisherman at all. And they the way the story goes is they got me the fly rod just to shut me up, And within a couple years, I got super into it. I was awful. I sucked at it, but I loved it, right? I remember getting so frustrated. The first trout I ever caught on a fly rod, my first fish was a crappie, which to this day is still the only crappie I've ever caught on a fly rod. My first trout, I was so frustrated. I put on a black rooster tail with a silver blade and just cast it through a big pool and dragged it so the blade would spin just to catch something, and it worked. So my first trout, my first fly caught trout was definitely cheating in the fly fishing world. Every year became more obsessed with it. Probably by college, maybe the late 90s, pretty much had given up spinning gear for the most part, other than maybe a few things here and there. And then by college, I was full-blown obsessed, and I double majored in school and got an internship in Montana, which was only supposed to be for 3 months. And it was with the Federation of Fly Fishers. So by pure luck, I got one in Montana. The second thing was I got one in the fly fishing industry, which wasn't really the plan. And as luck would have it, I was supposed to be going to Syracuse to do my master's in fisheries biology. So the plan was 3 months. And within 2 weeks, I got a job offer to stay and never left. Never went back home to finish my master's or to even start my master's at Syracuse. And we were a nonprofit, the Federation, and my position was funded by grant money. So we had a 3-year grant for my new role within the Federation, and which is now the Fly Fishers International, by the way. They changed their name in the last 15 years. Long story short, really got my foot in the door in the industry. Awesome job. Had the Yellowstone River in my backyard to fish after work every day. And they called me into their office and like, "Matt, we don't know what the heck happened, but we don't know if we dotted the wrong T. The grant writers dotted the wrong I, or crossed the wrong T, dotted the wrong I. But we're only getting a year worth of this funding. And if it doesn't come through, which it doesn't look like it's gonna, you have two options. One, we want you to stay. Here's what we can afford to pay you. Or if you decide to leave, we're going to help you get whatever job you want." So I'll try to make this story as short as possible. But within a couple weeks of that happening, it was a bummer. I was in no rush to leave, kind of looking for other stuff, but not hard. And my buddy that I graduated with moved from upstate New York to here, to Tahoe. And I was like, "Oh, dude, roll through Montana. Like, let's fish, let's party. Haven't seen you since we graduated." And we were a few beers deep at the famous Murray Bar in Livingston, Montana, the fishing bar. And I was like, "Dude, if you want somebody to start a fly fishing program at that resort, let me know. I'll come do what I've been doing my whole life, but do it as a business." I just passed my certified casting test, certified casting instructor test, was really like hell bent on teaching, right? Long story short, again, within a couple weeks, he called. He's like, "They're in, get out here." So I moved like pretty quickly, sight unseen, had never been to Tahoe. I knew it as a skiing mecca, but didn't, I knew the Truckee was tough, but didn't really know how tough it was at the time. And the plan, though, was to only teach. I was going to open up the school, partner with the resort. I wanted to teach, but I didn't really want to guide because I had so many friends that got burned out with it.
Yeah.
Kind of hit the wall, kind of that age-old story. They hate fishing. They hate people. They turn their love into a job and just totally burn out, right? So the first couple of years, I really didn't guide that much. I was giving trips away, and then kind of realized how many trips I was giving away, and I'm just like throwing money out the door to friends, which was fine. But the biggie was I finally learned the Truckee, and I felt comfortable taking people's money to where I wasn't just winging it and kind of hoping we catch fish. And I kind of had these other plans. I got some job offers along the way to leave here, but I'm glad I didn't take any of them. By year 3, the business kind of took off, and we've rallied an amazing crew of independent guides around us. We have about 15 guides and a few full-time instructors. And it's amazing. Like none of this happens without my wife running the show on the back end and our guides. I mean, they're the workhorses for sure.
So your school, your organization, I guess you'd call it, you're at the resort at Squaw Creek, correct?
We are.
And that's where you've always been?
That's where we started day one. We've been super fortunate to not really have too many hiccups along the way. The way it works is we lease their ponds on their golf course and stock them with rainbows. And that's the shortest explanation of it. It's great for them because they can kind of sell that amenity to their guests. And we can bring in guests from Reno, Tahoe, Sacramento. Within an hour and a half, we get most of our business. Obviously, the backyard like Truckee and North Shore is huge for us. But it's kind of this perfect symbiotic relationship where they can offer it to guests. I can bring most of our business is me bringing people in. They're like, oh, this is a big, beautiful property. Maybe we'll stay here next time, kind of deal. Yeah. And we offer a bunch of different classes. Basically, the normal routine is mid-May through the fall. So.
And is that's open to anyone, right? Adults, kids?
Yeah. Great question. So we have a bunch of different classes that we offer. There's maybe 5 or 6, but like our bread and butter is our casting catch. It's a 3-hour class, hour and a half casting lesson, hour and a half fishing. So we are a very beginner friendly market in the sense that we're not, even though like you might think of it, me and like the fishing crew in California might think of Truckee as a destination. We're not really a fishing town. As much as we would love to think that, we're not Bozeman, we're not Redding, we're not Jackson Hole. People are coming here on vacation first, and fishing is like one of the things they want to do. So because of that, we have a very huge demographic of beginners. So that cast and catch class, learn to cast, catch a couple fish is our bread and butter. And then we also have, among others, a kids only class, which is Creek Creatures. We kind of sell that as like 5 to 12 years old, where it's a mix of like casting lessons, catching the bugs, catching fish, fly tying. We kind of give the parents a little leeway on what things we pick to put it in. It's pretty custom. But yeah, I could go through all of them, but those are kind of our main classes that, they're our bread and butter.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I'm just picturing, and this might be far off, I'm picturing the parents want to go golfing across the way, and their kids want to do something. They're like, okay, you go fish while we play 18, and it's perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say it's a pretty good mix of parents that participate and parents that do exactly that. We're going to the spa, we're going golfing, we're going to go drive around the lake. And we've always joked with the parents, like you're more than welcome to join and either watch or fish. We'll get you in there if you want to do it. But man, if you're going to leave, we're like the most expensive babysitters on the planet, So, which is great. The kids have a blast. It's just fun for everybody. So.
Yeah, I grew up in that world. My father did all those types of classes when I was growing up, and we just loved it. But you mentioned sort of it's super beginner friendly, those programs at Resort at Squaw Creek, which is the exact opposite of at least how I think of the Truckee River. I think of the Truckee River as a difficult fishery, one that certainly shouldn't be tried by beginners, without anybody showing them the ropes. Give me your overall view. What's it like to fly fish the Truckee River? Give me an elevator pitch.
I would say the easiest answer is cookie cutter, generally size and not numbers is how we sell it. When people call, we are overly honest about expectations on the phone. We say, your mindset, if you're a beginner, your mindset should be have fun, learn something, and then catching fish in that order. If that's your mindset, you're going to have a great trip no matter what. That said, we are very lucky to have guides that have been doing it on the river a very long time, most of them 10 years plus. It's very rare that we get skunked, even with beginners or kids. Does it happen? Of course. The nickname of the Truckee is the Tricky or the Toughie, depending on who you talk to. Everyone kind of has their own theories on why the river is so tough. and everyone has theories on why it really shouldn't be as tough as it is. But the cool thing is that the icing on the cake is, without a question, we have some of the biggest trophy-sized rainbows, wild rainbows and wild browns in the state. Are you going to find bigger ones in some places? Yeah, but I mean, the Truckee is just your classic freestone river with big wild fish. There's only one small section that gets stocked. All of our fish are wild. So.
Why are the fish so big?
Oh, so big
and few and hard and difficult to catch. I mean, you said there's numerous opinions on this. What's yours?
My take is, for whatever reason, we have very low numbers of fish per mile. Fish and Wildlife has maybe only done one study in my 14, 15 years here that I know of. One of the sections that they sampled was Glenshire Bridge, which is a flat out mix of wild and hatchery fish. It's right above where it gets stocked. So that kind of skews the numbers a little bit, right? Because there's so many hatchery fish through that stretch, even though that is a public stretch. So we don't at all have good data on what our numbers are. We just know that they're low. Very skilled anglers that might crush fish in other locations, the lower Sac, some of the famous western rivers, that might catch 10 to 30 fish a day. That just doesn't happen on the Truckee. One of the reasons why that's so unusual is we have amazing bug life. We have as good of quality water as you can imagine, and we have great spawning habitat. So why we don't have more fish, I have no idea. One of the main reasons our fish get so big is the river is loaded with crayfish. We're fishing crayfish patterns quite a bit, more so than in other places. Not to say that it's the most, but from now through the fall, that's one of our go-to flies that we fish a fair bit, especially later in the summer.
What's your favorite season to fish the Truckee? What's your favorite time of year?
As one of our guides, Dan LeCount, says, that's like, what's your favorite ice cream? It's a hard one to pick. I'm a big fan of the fall, October, November. I would say the water temps are good, the bugs are good, the crowds clear out a little. Those browns get pretty grabby pre-spawn and post-spawn. If you want to fish dry flies, it's the summer. If you want to catch the biggest fish of your life, it's the spring during runoff. If you want no people, it's the winter. So that is a long way of answering what's my favorite season.
Tell me, I'm really curious, and I've read a lot about Lahontan cutthroat. Sorry, and so they're in Pyramid Lake downstream, correct? And they're trying to revive them in Lake Tahoe. And I know they famously, were native to the Truckee River. Is there a possibility of a comeback?
So you will get different answers from everybody that you talk to. My personal opinion is all of the stocking that is going on of hatchery Lahontan cutthroats and the fish that are stocked in the river and Tahoe, with very few exceptions, are going to be anywhere from like 9 to 14 inches. Those fish are stocked, in my mind, as a PR move. That is not really a reintroduction plan. Those fish are getting eaten right away by the bigger fish. And there is just no question about the fact that that's happening. Now, when I say stocked in the river, I'm talking the Nevada stuff. I'll talk about the Pyramid Lake stuff in a minute.
Right.
So the fish being stocked in Tahoe is great to say, hey, we're reintroducing this species. Are some fish growing to adult size and running up some of the Tahoe tributaries to spawn? Absolutely. I have not seen any data, though, that the wild population is increasing. I mean, those fish are getting eaten by Tahoe's full of big salmon. Lake trout, max out here, we call them. Back home, we call them lake trout. Huge rainbows, huge browns, right? And it's cool when you catch one and you hear somebody getting a nice adult 20-plus incher every once in a while. But with that plan, there's too many introduced species for them to thrive. The cutthroats that are stocked on the Nevada side, say through downtown Reno, to keep it simple. Those fish are there as a put and take fishery. Travis Hawks, who's the fisheries biologist for Endow, he's done podcasts, and I've known him for a few years, saying for the fish that don't get eaten right away by other fish or by people, pretty much have a shelf life of only like 60 days. Lahontan cutthroats, even though we think of them as, you used to be able to walk across their backs in the Truckee, they are not a moving water fish. They are a lake fish. So they don't do particularly well raising them in hatcheries. They don't get big. When they get really big, they die, which is unusual. When rainbows, browns, and brookies, you can grow them to exceptionally large sizes in hatcheries. Now, I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer. The good news is this huge actual reintroduction process that's going on at Pyramid Lake. It is one of the few success stories. As people in the last 100 years, we've obviously destroyed salmonid fisheries across the country, especially the West Coast. That is a whole nother deal. Those fish, now that we have the true genetic strain as of 2006, which we thought was extinct, what they're calling the Pilot Peak strain, those are the mega fish, 10 to 25 pounders that have been being caught for the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years, if not last 2. They just keep getting bigger and bigger. Those fish are not only now entering the hatchery system to be spawned by man, every year they're getting more recruitment into the Truckee River, and they're spawning wildly without help from us in the river. To go a step further, they're doing don't quote me on this number, a $28 to $30 million fish ladder on Derby Dam, which is the first real dam that they hit that they can't get around without our help. And my geographic location might be a bit off, but once that dam is no longer an issue, I believe these giant fish are going to get up as far as Sparks. So maybe not quite to downtown Reno, but pretty freaking close. And they've been changing the laws down there for the last couple of years, so we can now legally target these fish, which is huge. You could never target them in the lower river, whether you are on tribal land or not. But I mean, that is going to be a really cool deal once that starts happening. It's going to change the entire fishing dynamic of this whole region once people start consistently catching 5 to 30 pound fish, out of that lower part of the river. It's going to be a game changer. So that's the icing on the cake. That's the kind of success story we're all looking forward to.
Right. So you're obviously not from the area. Tell me, what are your favorite places, I guess, around the world that you fished?
Oh my gosh. Again, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? So I've been super fortunate to have some amazing clients in the 15 or so years that I've been here. And we've put together a pretty cool little mom and pop hosted travel program where I host trips to different destinations all over the world. And man, we're doing about, this year is the exception. Everything has been canceled this year. On average, 3 to 6 weeks on the road to different destinations all over the place. But my gosh, if I had to pick some of my favorites, Cuba is up there. I'm a saltwater junkie. Trout pay the bills. I will always have a spot in my heart for trout, sipping dries or chucking streamers. But the sight fishing aspect of the saltwater game, because that's pretty much all you do. And I love to sight fish for trout, nothing wrong. But the sight fishing and the casting aspect really gets me going. But Cuba is one of my favorites. Guanaja, which is a little island just south of Roatan in Honduras, is one of my favorite spots. It's kind of off the beaten path. It's not like the Bahamas or Belize that's just hugely popular, right? And I'm a steelhead guy too. British Columbia is up there. We just did an amazing trip last fall to the Naknek, swinging for Alaska's biggest rainbows. We caught some giant char too that were all pumpkined out in bright orange, which is pretty cool. But man, I don't know. I would say the best part about those trips, though, don't get me wrong, that's when I get to fish. It's rare I get to go fish, my own backyard. But the people that you meet, the culture, the food, really bonding with clients. I mean, that's what those trips are all about. But I can't travel without my clients, and I have to give them all the credit in the world for allowing me to be able to travel as much as I do, and my wife, of course.
What about Northern California? Have you gotten out? Have you seen all the rivers in NorCal? What are your favorite spots?
I can't say that I've seen them all, but my first several years before the business took off, I was the classic, single at the beginning, dating my wife at the beginning, road tripping with buddies, sleeping in the truck, doing the camping thing. Although I've never hit the McCloud in the fall to try to chase those big browns, I mean, the McCloud is just so cool. It is so unique. It's like if you get around those, I don't know what species of plant they are. I'm sure a lot of your listeners do, those just giant green leaves the size of a Volkswagen bug. I mean, it's like you're in Jurassic Park, right? The water's blue. So the McCloud is up there. What else? A lot of the classic spots. I'm a steelhead guy. I like the Trinity from a number standpoint. Obviously, it can be a zoo up there and bumper boats for a good chunk of the year if the fish are in. But it's just another cool river, mainly because it reminds me of like a bigger Truckee. Freestone, a lot of nymphing. We try to swing when we can up there, depending on water temps and if the fish are super grabby. But of all the Northern California rivers, I mean, the McCloud is just cool.
Yeah. They call them the rainbow of the world because those are the rainbow trout that they use to stock all the rivers from, New Zealand and Japan and Europe. And McCloud is one of my favorite places. It's beautiful.
That red band is pretty special. If you or your listeners haven't read A Synthetic Fish, it is like a must read. It talks about how basically the rainbow trout is the most human-induced invasive species that we've just planted literally across the world, but it comes from the McCloud, and there's a few genetics in there after the fact from some other watersheds up there, but it's a really cool read on how we've just taken this one strain of fish and literally brought it across the world. There's red bands, McCloud red bands in Hawaii. Like, you're kidding me?
Yeah.
So.
So other than fishing, you live in, quite frankly, one of my favorite places in the world. What do you do when you're not fishing in Tahoe? Are you a skier? I mean, you're right next to one of the great ski resorts on the planet. What's your idea of a good day when you're not on the river?
So as painful as it is for me to say this, I was a pretty, I hate the word hardcore, but like growing up, and even when I first got here, I skied a lot. And every year, any of your skier listeners are going to hate me because I live here. I've skied less and less every by the year. A few different reasons. One is our winter fishing business has gotten busier, which is great. It's hard to complain about being busy during a slow time. But my plan is my oldest is 6. We got him on skis last year for the first time. And my hope is he gets into it, and that'll kind of recharge me to start skiing again. I have no good reason for telling anyone why I don't ski as much as I do, other than we're a little more booked than we used to be. But I don't know. I just have totally dropped the ball with my skiing world. But I try to golf a little bit here and there. Again, used to play a ton of golf, especially in high school. But family stuff, obviously, that's a big part of the life now. To get some off days. But we live in one of the outdoor playgrounds of the world.
Yeah,
there's no question.
I'll tell you why I don't snowboard very much. The knees, my knees are gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It just, you have these grandiose pictures of what it's going to be like getting back up there, and as you get older, it just hurts, and so that's my reason why I don't do it as much. And stuff like fishing is just much easier to get done as you get older. So a little bit more relaxing. I'm not, an extreme sports junkie anymore. So
I hear you.
I have one last thing that I want to ask you, because I have a personal thought about this, and I've had my personal experiences. Describe a fishing guide. Describe a person who dedicates their life to fishing, and what type of person it takes. Because I've seen a lot of, I've seen the fishing junkies, and to me, a lot of them have similar traits, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you have a different view on it, but I see the passion behind, you know, fishing guides. And what do you think about, you know, just a normal fishing guide that you come across?
Man, that is such a good question. I would say the first thing that pops to mind of all of the traits would be they have to be a good teacher, you know, and then you can kind of put in the patience, you know, the commitment, the passion, kind of all of the other things. But like if you don't like to teach, like what are you doing?
Right.
You know, I always tell people, you know, I don't know if you saw it. I threw up a survey maybe a week and a half ago, and for a second of that post that I threw up, I talked about how teaching the sport is what gets me going. You know, don't get me wrong, when somebody hooks their first fish or their biggest fish or catches their most fish, like that is awesome. But leading up to that, it's like putting them through this success path of like, hey, tell me where you're at, and where do you want to go? And my job is to kind of take you along that journey, right? It could be somebody that's fished all over the world and fishes 100 days a year. Then we kind of step up our game. Or it could be somebody that's just like, Matt, I don't even really care if I catch one. Like, this is my first day. I just want to be out here and be in the river, maybe see some bugs. Catching a fish is icing on the cake, you know? So it's constantly rolling with the punches, and, you know, you got to have a people personality. Every day, depending on what option we are doing, we're spending 3 to 8 hours with somebody that we have never met. And hopefully it goes well with the personalities clicking.
Right.
So, but yeah, I would say the number one thing would be you love to teach it. So.
That's funny you say that. I mean, my father guided for 25 years, and then he went straight from that to being a teacher. Yeah, and still to this day, we go fishing, and he can't relax. You know, he's constantly saying, "Oh, do this and do that," and God bless him for it. You know, I just want him to have fun, because I do know what you were talking about earlier, how it wears on you. And I saw it sort of at the end of his guiding career, how he wasn't getting as excited to get out and help other people catch fish because you're carrying all the rods and you know, getting all the lines untangled. But yeah, you know, I've just the passion and the excitement to wake up every day. That's sort of what I've noticed in fishing guides. And so it's been fun to watch since I was a little kid. But so I always love to talk to your types.
Where did your dad guide?
All over. We're from Redding. So so we spend our summers at the Clearwater Lodge, obviously the lower and upper Sac, Pitt River, a lot of Pitt River. Just sort of all up in the Redding area.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So speaking of the places I've fished in NorCal, I have not fished the upper Sac. And that's just been one of those spots in the back of my mind, you know, when I was kind of trout bumming, quote unquote, with my buddies early on. That was one spot I never got to, and it's still very high on the list. So. Yeah,
we go up there. We do videos for Siskiyou County and their tourism bureau, and we always stay in Dunsmuir. And you can literally get an Airbnb on the river and just walk out, you know, your back porch and drop a line. It's beautiful. It's great.
Yeah, it's gonna happen one of these years. It has to.
We'll get you up there. Well, Matt, I'm just a big fan of what you do. I love seeing those big fish on your Instagram page, and just, you know, sharing your excitement for fishing and the sport in Northern California. I love what you do. So if people want to talk to you about fishing at your school or on the Truckee, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, great question. Appreciate the offer to kind of throw this info out there. As you might imagine, our Instagram is Matt Heron Fly Fishing. Social media, Facebook is Matt Heron Fly Fishing. Email is mattheronflyfishing@gmail.com. Those are the biggies. For most bookings, that will end up going through my wife, who runs kind of quote unquote reservations department. That's kind of her cup of tea, because I'm on the water all the time. So you may or may not talk to me, but if you send us a message on social media, Facebook or Instagram, 100% it'll be me replying. The bookings go through her, but we just threw up that post the other day that talks about our pond and river package, which is a combination of our 3-hour class and then packaging it with a happer pull down the river, which is hugely popular. We put that post up the other day and got a ton of personal message about it, just with questions. And those were me replying, So, yeah, we'd love to get people out there. We have an amazing guide team that, like a lot of industries, lost a good chunk of their season so far. So, any support towards local guides, whether it's us or the rest of the state or the West, or for the whole country for that matter, not to leave out any of my guide buddies back home, support your local fishing guides. It's, it's the definition of social distancing by nature, which makes it a lot easier for people to just call and book rather than, doing other things that they might have to put a little more thought into with the new normal.
Right. Absolutely. And everyone be sure to listen to Matt's podcast, the Truckee Fly Fishing Podcast. I've listened to some episodes. I actually listened to your Pewta Creek episode, and that was very informative. Yeah, very informative.
Yeah.
So follow him on social, listen to his podcast. Matt, thank you so much for coming on today. Thanks for all you do, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Absolutely. Love to fish someday. Appreciate the support. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Okay, that does it for our interview with Matt Heron. Awesome guy. Does some really cool stuff out there in Truckee. We're going to have to get you out there, Bob, and catch a fish on his private water because it looks really fun. And they stock that thing with nice rainbow trout.
I'm in.
So, okay, so we want to have a little fun at the end of our podcast here with the return of Adventures in NorCal. Yeah? That was a good one?
Sure.
So today we realized that we've never explained the hike to McCloud Falls. The 3 tiers of McCloud Falls. So lower, middle, upper McCloud Falls in McCloud, California, right outside Mount Shasta, is part of one trail loop. And it's pretty easy to get to them. It's about 3.5 miles round trip. And we did it twice last year.
Mm-hmm.
We did once in the winter.
Like January.
It was February.
Oh.
I remember specifically. There's a lot of snow. It was February 2019, so there was a lot of snow. And then we did the following summer, like July 2019. So we did it twice last year, and they were 2 very different experiences.
Totally.
So we thought we'd go through it and just give you an idea of what it's like to visit McCloud Falls. It's one of the most popular outdoor destinations in NorCal. So you may have already been there before. But so let's start by talking about our winter trip. So we wanted to do 5 waterfalls in a day, and we did it. We did a fun video. I think it's one of our better videos that we've done, where we did the 3 tiers of McCloud Falls. We did Moss Spray Falls, and we did Hedge Creek Falls all in one day. Really great day. But that day, there was a lot of snow at McCloud Falls. McCloud is a little bit higher elevation than those other 2 waterfalls. So we got there, and the road was closed.
It was not plowed at all.
It was not plowed. It wasn't closed. You're right. It wasn't plowed, and we were not expecting that, even though we probably should have.
We were not driving an off-road vehicle. We were definitely driving the opposite of that. So it was a challenge.
So we got there, and we said, man, what do we do? So we just decided, screw it. We're going to get out of the car and hike from Highway 89 to the trailhead, do the entire trailhead, and then hike back.
Basically doubling our hike, I believe.
Yeah, it was around. It honestly didn't end up being that difficult, but that did create an awesome scene because there was no one else there. We had 3 waterfalls to ourselves, and they were covered in snow. And it was like a nice day. It was sunny and somewhat warm.
It was cool enough. It was a perfect temperature to hike in.
Right. So we hiked all the way down to Lower McCloud Falls, had that entire place to ourselves, hiked up to Middle McCloud Falls, had that entire place to ourselves, and then up to Upper McCloud Falls. entire place to ourselves, and then we hiked back on the road instead of going all the way through.
Right.
So if you aren't familiar with the McCloud Falls Trail, it's just one trail. You go up, and then you come back down the same trail, which is really cool because you get to see Lower and Middle McCloud Falls twice if you start low and head high. So that was great. We didn't use snowshoes or anything. We didn't
Hiking
need them.
boots were fine.
Yeah. And yeah, I've never experienced such a popular outdoor destination like that by ourselves.
And we almost turned back. We we almost didn't do it, but we did, and we overcame, and we conquered because that's what we at Active NorCal do.
Yeah, and just because we had to park on the side, like further away, did not make it that much more difficult. We just hiked on the road.
Right. I remember thinking, man, this is gonna suck, but it wasn't bad at all. It was a flat hike pretty much the whole way for the most part. So I mean, it was a beautiful snowy day. Again, there were very few clouds out, so the sun was out, and it turned into a really nice day.
Yeah, and so fast forward from that beautiful day in February to a beautiful day in July. It was you, me, and our father, Chip,
Mm-hmm.
and we went up there, and it was completely different. It's hot. It's the flows are a little bit less than you would see in the wintertime, and it's packed. And but being with Chip O'Brien, we were able to do the fishing challenge with him.
Yes, we were.
So this was sort of a lesson in the native trout to the McCloud River, the red band trout. So he gave us a full lesson
History
on that.
lesson,
Yeah, which they are beautiful. I mean,
They're gorgeous for sure.
If anyone doesn't know about the McCloud River, they call them the rainbow of the world because they have taken rainbow trout from the McCloud River and took them and planted them in rivers and tributaries all over the world. New Zealand, Japan, Europe. Those trout are so beautiful that they take them all over the world. But, to catch one, and they're relatively small, those red band trout, to catch one, first we went up above Upper McCloud Falls, and that didn't work. So we went, and he fished the pool right below Middle McCloud Falls, and that's the big pool where most people go swimming, and he caught one pretty quickly.
And we should say that he wasn't very excited about this. He does not like fishing in waterfalls. It's not the easiest place to fish. It's not the most comfortable place to fish, and he made that very clear to us. But he's a skilled angler and was able to hook one just like he has at every other place we've ever challenged him to catch fish.
Yeah, to fly fish into the direction of a waterfall presents many obstacles, mostly just placing your fly where you want it to be. And so we made him do it at Bernie Falls. He caught a fish pretty quickly there. Then we made it, and every time he does something like this, he catches one really quickly, and he's like, I'm not doing that anymore.
Which is fine.
Which
we
is
just
fine.
needed it for the video.
So we got him to catch one in Middle McCloud Falls. He caught one pretty quick, a somewhat small red band trout, and that was fun. But if you've never been to doing the McCloud Falls hike, most people start at Lower McCloud Falls. And by the way, you can park at Middle McCloud Falls. You can park at Upper McCloud Falls. There's parking lots at each.
Which is why we were able to hike out in the snow from Upper, because there's a parking lot at both, and the Upper is closer to where we parked our car. So we just hiked down the furthest one and hiked back up, and it wasn't even that bad.
Yeah, it's an easy hike. They're going up from Lower McCloud Falls all the way up to Upper McCloud Falls. There's a little bit of an incline. You're doing some switchbacks at one point, and there's some stairs.
It's good for you.
But once you get past that one area that's uphill, you're either flat or you're going downhill. So it's a really easy hike, about 3.8 miles, I believe. And it's just waterfall galore, and
They're beautiful. And they're very different.
Right. So say it's a summer day, you arrive at Lower McCloud Falls, you jump into the water.
Be careful for rocks.
But there's a little platform that people can jump into the water off Lower McCloud Falls. You get out, you hike up to Middle McCloud Falls, you jump in the water, and then you go up to Upper McCloud Falls. You kind of just take in that scenery. You don't want to go down to Upper McCloud Falls. It's hard to get to. And then you can come back and do the other two again. It's just awesome. One of the premier outdoor destinations in NorCal. They have campsites right there where you can either, tent camp or RV camp. And there's plenty of fishing. There's plenty of great fish all throughout that area, both above, between, and below the waterfalls. There's a decent amount of fish.
There's something for everyone to do there. You can camp, you could fish, you could swim, you could be either really active, you could be really lazy, and just be outdoors. That smell of Northern California is very prevalent there.
Yes. Up in Siskiyou County, right next to great, McCloud, California. They have an awesome little town there. And, of course, close to Mount Shasta. Just probably one of the top waterfall experiences in Northern California. So that's our adventure time. Go check it out. It's a great hike, winter, summer, fall, whatever, and one of our favorites of the year. So that's Adventures in NorCal. Okay, and that's also it for this episode of the Talking NorCal podcast. Stay tuned. Later this week, we actually have a very exciting interview with the brand new owner of Anderson Valley Brewing Company, Kevin McGee. He's got a really cool story, unique. He comes from outside of beer, and he bought a big brewery in Northern California up there in Boonville. We talk about his life, how he wants to keep that brewery local, and we try to see if we can talk some Boontling with him too, the native language to Boonville, California. So look out for that later this week. And to do that, you're going to need to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss anything. We got some great interviews coming up in the next couple weeks. So keep listening, guys. We appreciate your support. And remember, stay active.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and there knows how to kick it down in Santa Cruz. Or NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little mental when we visit Sacramento. Yeah, we're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we partake in nature's bounty when we visit Humboldt County. Yeah, we're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and me, I'm hella cool, 'cause I live in Sebastopol. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and you know that we gotta go. We're on our way to Tahoe. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, we're hella NorCal.